Hey, everybody, and we are officially live. Thank you for joining. And yeah, today we're going to be handling a very crucial topic when it comes to outbound and sales in general, and that's syncing your outbound engine, Aimfox, with your CRM. So we're going to be showing you how to do this through Outbound Sync, which is basically a bridge in between, helping you seamlessly integrate with Hubspot, with Close, with Salesforce, basically everything you need. And yeah, with us today, we have none other than Harris Kenny, the founder of Outbound Sync. Hey, man, welcome. Good to have you here.
How's it going? Great to speak with everybody. And it's good to see you, man. We first met in person. We met like a year ago when we did that laser tag event together. And so it's great to be chatting again.
Yeah, man. Like honestly, that was super fun. By the way, guys, so last year for Sculpt, we were lucky enough to be like one of the sponsors of an event that Outbound Sync and Harris was organizing, and it was like an awesome laser tag event, and like everybody was on it, So that was a blast, man. I hope we're gonna get a chance to do it again this year.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was a really great group of people. It was fun, it's just funny listening to everybody. It felt like some of these conversations that are happening in WhatsApp and Slack or whatever, all of a sudden it was in person. It was a good time.
Yeah, tell me about it. It was awesome. It was awesome, man. But yeah, I mean, we're very excited to do this today. I know we've been talking about this integration for a while. Basically, what I'd like, how I kind of see this playing out is like, where you give us a breakdown of how you build integration, how it works, what are the things you're looking at, how are you like mapping everything and putting everything together. And then like for the audience, any questions you guys have, drop them in the comments, and then we'll reserve time in the end for a Q&A section. And yeah, maybe, and I don't know, maybe some special prizes from Aimfox, So yeah, I see we already have some people joining. So yeah, man, I think we can start kicking this off.
Awesome. Well, great to have some folks on. Appreciate it. Definitely drop in comments, questions. Like happy to have this be like a two-way conversation as much as possible, given the format. So, let's just kind of start at a really high level. So the way that most people end up here is their business is looking to grow. And they find that oftentimes like one of the first things they'll adopt is a CRM. And the idea is like, oh, I'm going to get this CRM, especially if my team is scaling. I've got multiple sales reps, or I got marketing and sales need to talk to each other. And that's going to help me sell, right? The first kind of category creator was Salesforce, right? So this is the selling tool. And then people realize, oh, it's kind of more of like a file system for managing contacts, companies, leads. And so the problem is that what people wanted in the first place was, hey, I want to grow. I want to generate new leads. And they realized that the CRM actually isn't helping them do that. And then maybe they use some of the native tools like send an email, or maybe send a manual sequence or an automated sequence or something like that. But you realize like, okay, even if I make the most of these baked in tools, they're still not generating new leads for me. And so they look around, they ask people, they maybe check out like a really smart agency, they find some posts online, they realize, okay, there's this tool called Aimfox. That's going to give me the wedge I need to actually generate leads. And now I'm like beginning to solve the problem I had like however many steps ago in this process, when I wanted to grow and I wanted to bring on more people, solve our problem, whatever it is we do. And then for some percentage of those companies, they get clicking with Aimfox. And for some percentage of those companies, they say, hey, we need to get this back into a CRM because we need to assign it to one of multiple people. We need marketing to have visibility into what's going on. We want to run paid ads. We want to, whatever the motion might be. We actually need that file system that we set up in the first place. And we need the leads. And so, that's just like at a really high level, the kind of the environment that we're in right now. And what Outbound Sync is looking to do is you have that tip of the spear, really, which is Aimfox, which is out there generating those new leads, starting those new conversations. That's where the actual growth is coming from. And then we're helping keep track of that inside of a system of record. Oftentimes, that's when companies shift to some sort of multiplayer mode, where they've got, again, multiple reps, multiple departments, executive visibility. Maybe they have investors who are looking to see, like, they want dashboards, and they're basically, people need to be able to align on what's going on. And increasingly now, agents need a place for context to live. So if an agent is good doing, for example, an analysis of like, where are we getting our new leads from? And the fact that, let's just say, who knows, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50% of your pipeline maybe is coming from Aimfox. Well, if the agent doesn't know that because that's not in the system it's checking, then it has incomplete information. It's going to make bad suggestions. And even if you use API and things like that, it's possible. Aimfox is like pretty portable with data, but even still, sometimes it's just helpful to have it in multiple places, right? So that's just like kind of setting it up. That's how we think about this problem. That's who this is for. Maybe this is you right now. Maybe this is going to be you in the future. But just before we kind of go in, I can share my screen and we can kind of start showing what it looks like and start talking about practical stuff. Alex, is there anything else you wanted to add or just kind of tee up in terms of how you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, like I think you did a really good job, like lining it out, like just like going off of like our organization, like right, Aimfox, right, like you like it sounds obvious that you like, hey, yeah, you should put everything together. You should have like transparency data and like everything moving seamlessly through, because we use Close CRM for as the CRM, right? And we use Aimfox, and then we use email sequencers for outbound, like instantly and smart lead, depending on the time of the year, right? Yeah, I mean, like as, for example, as a leader, like I want to have like full attribution and full data for my team. So that's kind of me just like talking as like a SaaS founder, like, and it's not as straightforward to put it all together. So I am personally excited to see this, because I'm pretty sure we're going to be using it. So
yeah. Well, and I'll take a minute just to kind of give you credit where I think it's due. People may just associate you with Aimfox. They may not realize that you're a pretty successful entrepreneur and you've got multiple other businesses that you've built and scaled. And so I think that like people might not realize sometimes like the people behind the things that we build. So, growth is key, right? And like, that you're a multiple time successful entrepreneur. You've got to be growing and you've got to be generating new leads. That is like the first and most important thing. And we'll have a lot of times I'll have a call with a customer, discovery call with a prospect. And I'll say to them, like, you don't need this yet. You need to get growing first. You need to get these new leads in. Like when you have leads to manage, I would love to help you out. But until you have leads to manage, put every token that you have to spend in, cursor, exactly. Every minute that you have to spend to think about it, you need to be thinking about.
And if you don't get the attribution, you don't get the attribution, you lose some data, but like at the end, like you kind of like make it work and you make money. So like, this is, I do agree with that. Like, 100%.
Having some water in a leaky bucket is better than having a sealed bucket that's empty.
And especially like from a founder perspective, like when you're in an early stage, like you really need to like decide what you want to focus on. Like, and like building all of this out is awesome, but it's deviating focus from the biggest goal. And that's like, getting the first users and, just like getting the initial traction. Once you have that initial traction, product market fit, once the wheel starts spinning, I think that's when you guys become very, very relevant.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. And, maybe for a more established company, maybe it's you have a new product or new territory, same idea might apply. But yeah, once you've got some traction, let's talk about this. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully this is going to work. I've got something teed up here. Let's see. Okay. Share screen, window, Outbound Sync. Let's see. Share.
And then I'll just
Can you see that?
Page? Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right. So let's just talk like at a really basic level about, how CRMs work and just kind of how we think about this. So every CRM has a data model or a schema about how they organize the world. So Outbound Sync, we integrate with 6 different CRMs right now. HubSpot's probably is our most popular in terms of number of users. Salesforce is next. But we've only recently introduced a number of others, and I'll just kind of click through them really quick and just compare the different models. If you're at a place where you're like thinking about changing CRMs, like we use Close as well. And Alex, you mentioned you use Close internally. Like I'm a big fan of Close. I think that Close does a lot of great things. We use HubSpot for some stuff too. We actually have a lot of customers that use multiple of these tools, which is kind of funny. Bigger companies, there's a lot of big companies that use both HubSpot and Salesforce. They use HubSpot for their marketing automation and then Salesforce as their kind of more CRM. And the like core idea here is that we've got a single system that we want to generally define how we organize data. So in HubSpot, for example, an individual person is a contact. And a contact can be associated with a company, right? So when we get these events from Aimfox, a connection request is sent, a message is received, a reply is received, or something like that. We're generating these individual events that we're getting from Aimfox. And now, one of the things that is really powerful about Aimfox, like one of my favorite things about it, just kind of knowing the space pretty well, is that the metadata that Aimfox provides is very rich. Some of the tools in the space, like they give you just a little bit of information when these events happen. But Aimfox gives you a lot to work with, which means that we, as a middleware, like a connector product, we have a lot to work with. We have a lot of context that we can drop into, the CRM and fields to map and stuff like that. But anyway, this is just like a whole bunch of fields. A thing happened. Here's when it happened. Here's what happened. Here's who it happened with. And we need to map that to the data model in the CRM. So in HubSpot, maybe that means I'm logging an activity to a contact, and I'm associating that to that individual person who received the message. And then in HubSpot, you also have leads. The lead object in HubSpot is unique. It's kind of like the deal object, where a contact can have a lead associated with it, and it's like this temporal state. Like for now, this person is a lead. And then eventually that lead will go through a process and then close. And then I think, ideally in HubSpot world, a deal would be opened up after that. But the contact stays at the center of that world. In Salesforce, it's different. Salesforce is a temporary state, and some companies don't even use the lead object, but eventually it'll convert to a contact and an account. Every contact must have an account. And that's how Salesforce works. A little bit different. And then we could talk about the activities, and we'll jump in the weeds. We can pull these up. And especially if people mention in the comments what they're running, I'm happy to kind of drill down deeper on this. I'll go just because I'll just kind of keep going in order here. So high level.
Sorry for jumping in. People in the audience, do let us know what CRM you're running.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I'm interested in learning because it's always good to know what kind of tools our users have in their tool stack. So share that data in the comments, and then you can just keep on going, and then we'll go back to that discussion.
Yeah, please do, and we'll share some really practical workflows, some practical reports where it's like, okay, cool. Once I get this data over there, what can I do with it, right? Like, who cares, right? What's the benefit? We'll talk about that in a lot more detail as we get into the specific systems. High level's a brand new one. High level's got a contact object. Similarly, you've got activities that are logging to it. It's going to be very similar to HubSpot. And Pipedrive is similar. There's a handful of these that have kind of a similar data model. Pipedrive, high level, and HubSpot, I would argue, are kind of similar. Where ADIO is kind of the same way, right? Salesforce has this weird thing they do with leads. And then Close is unique because Close is really heavily dependent on the lead object. You do have contacts, but the contacts are really subordinated to the lead object. So, if people want to talk about Close, I can pull it up. We can show how that's a little bit different. But in the case of Close, the lead is really heavy. So, the data model matters because the data model is going to govern what we can do with the data once it arrives in the system and how we kind of work with it. The workflows and the automation that we'll create, the information that'll be available to agents, to AI agents and Claude and Codex and these other tools as they want to understand what's going on with their outbound motion. And then ultimately the reports that we're able to build. I think that the way to think about it is that you're going to have automations you can build inside and with Aimfox. You're going to have reports you can build inside and with Aimfox. And then you're going to have separate sets of automations and reports that you build inside of the CRM environment. It's not an either or thing. Generally, it's solving slightly different problems. And we find that people can get kind of a broad understanding of what's happening in the CRM, and they can connect the dots for later events that occur in the life cycle of a lead through the CRM. But when they want to really, really drill down and get detailed campaign analytics, you got to be in Aimfox for that, because Aimfox has the richer data model to cover what's happening with the outbound motion, right? So it's kind of like picking the right tool for the job. We adapt that Aimfox data to get into the CRM, but it doesn't mean the CRM is necessarily the only place that it matters. It's just for certain types of questions, we want the data to be in that shape of the CRM so that we can do stuff with it there. So let me stop here. And we can drill down in some specifics. I think my plan will probably be to talk about HubSpot. That's our deepest integration. It's the most users. It does the most. It's conceptually similar to most of them. So I think that that'll be my next step, unless you're seeing something else in the chat, or unless you have any other ideas.
Yeah, I think HubSpot is a good place to start. I think drilling down on that and just going into the specific workflows is going to be useful. And then, I mean, I think like it will also serve kind of like as inspiration for like people, like what they could do, and maybe, you know, give new ideas to people watching this either live or after the recording.
That sounds great. All right, I'm just pulling up a HubSpot test account right here, and I'm going to move that into our tab. Okay, cool.
Man, HubSpot evolved so much. Like I remember like HubSpot in like 2016, 17, like when I was first like using it, like it was just CRM. Now it's like everything, you know?
Yeah, they are really, it's an interesting approach. You know, they really, I think that the most analogous thing is that they're trying to kind of build the Apple of this like B2B software, like the user-facing B2B software. Like Apple has its own version of everything. And
yeah,
over time, they're slowly getting better. Some HubSpot things are very good. Some are just okay.
Yeah, true.
You know, they do a lot now for sure. And we'll see some of that today. But there is a tension between I want everything in one place, or I want this like sort of best of breed, you know, purpose-built stack where you're picking kind of specialty tools, and it's an interesting tension, I think.
It's like, without going too much off topic, I think it's a really relevant discussion, because like that we can have sometime, because like, you know, you have all these tools like, you know, instantly doing so much more than just being an emailing sequencer, right? Like, or, you know, like all of these tools like, you know, Apollo, they're all trying to like expand the offer. So, you know, it's definitely something to like, it's an interesting discussion. Like, you know, do you focus on something, go like the email bison route, or do you like try and do a bit of everything and just like capture as much market as possible? But
yeah, totally. I mean, especially with AI, right? I mean, like now it's possible to build a lot of software.
Yeah, it's easier
to manage it, right? You have to maintain it, you have to support it, but you're right, it is easier than ever. It's very interesting. I feel like definitely there's a lot more overlapping competition, at least in the go-to-market sales marketing tech, than there was in the past. I feel like in the past you sort of had this unspoken like detente of like, okay, we're not going to go here, you're not going to go there, we'll do our thing. And, but yeah, now it feels like free for all. I agree with that. And so HubSpot's a good example of that, right? So they're a platform that's built out a lot of things. I'm going to show you some things in this that are useful for reference. But if you're using any of those other 5 CRMs that we talked about, even if you're using HubSpot, there's going to be workflow automation tools that you can use, like N8N or you know, Make. Zapier is actually a customer of ours. And you can use Zapier, you know, and a tool like Outbound Sync. But there's lots of ways to automate things. You can build stuff now, and you know, increasingly people are using automations inside of Cursor and Claude and Codex. But like fundamentally, the idea is that like a thing happens, there's a trigger. And then we want something to happen as a result. We want that trigger to then cause an action, an automated action for data hygiene or creating a task or doing a follow-up or whatever, right? I mean, that's just kind of like the basics of it. And we'll talk about that in the context of HubSpot here. Before we get into that workflow, though, let's just talk about what it looks like to get the data inside of HubSpot natively. So when we'll focus on social here, right? Because we're here talking about Aimfox. We're not going to talk about. We can talk a little bit about email, but let's just talk about social. So we've got lots of different social integrations that we provide, and what we do is that like when you're using here, I'll show you what a test payload would look like. Let me find my HubSpot account. Here we go. And let me pull up our test modal. Give me 1 second, and I'm going to pull up, and we'll send a little test payload right now. We'll do it live. Just give me 1 second. Here's okay. HubSpot. Pulling this up. Give me 1 second. Okay. So let's just say we send a connection request. We're using our Aimfox account, and we're sending our connection request, and we'll use this Jane Doe account. So we're going to send a connection request. And then let's say it's accepted. So we'll do this kind of in sequential order here. And I'm just going to kind of, let's see, we send a message, and then we get our reply. Let's see, message sent, and then reply received. Let's see, is this the right thing? Yeah. Okay. Yes. Sorry, Aimfox has a bunch of events, so I just want to make sure I'm doing this in a way that is logical. Oh, wait, no, I think that's email. Oh, 1 second, sorry. Is this what I wanted? Okay. Okay, great. Now I'm going to go back to my Jane Doe record. Let's see. Sometimes these take a second to load, so let's just give this a little refresh. Oh, am I on the wrong Jane Doe? Let me see. This is a test account, folks. I apologize. We're doing this live. Hold on 1 second. Oh, you know what? I'm in the wrong test account. Give me a second. We're doing this live.
Wrong Jane Doe.
Yeah. Well, wrong portal. I was using our staging server. So that writes into a different engineering account. I apologize. I was cheating. I'm using my colleague Maria's test account set up here. Okay, hold on. Let me just get this pulled up. Thank you for your patience. Let's see, June 24th. Here we go. Is this it? Okay. June 24th, H20. Okay, perfect. Okay, great. Let me switch over here. All right. So here's an example of our data that we're getting from Aimfox specifically, right? So we've got, like I mentioned before, Aimfox gives you a lot of metadata, which is nice. Some platforms are more open, some platforms are a little more closed. Aimfox is relatively open from my perspective. Compared to others that we work with. So you can see that Aimfox is giving us a ton of metadata that we can really easily pull in here. And we can see that our sales engagement platform we're working with is Aimfox. We can see our campaign name, campaign ID. We can see the profile that we're interacting with and the messaging. We can also see that this is natively being logged, right? So this is being natively logged inside of HubSpot as a LinkedIn activity or message. And the cool thing is that this means that here we can trigger workflows. Here we can trigger workflows, which I'll show you. And then here we can trigger native reporting. So where Outbound Sync is different, where we try to focus is how do we get this data in a native format inside of the CRM so it's useful in the CRM. Just getting it in there, like logged as a note, isn't bad. And that may get the job done for you. And a lot of integrations work that way. And so like, I'm not going to be a hater about that, right? If that's the job that you need done, then keep it simple. But the difference here is that like this is a native LinkedIn message type. This is a native HubSpot activity timeline event. And so I'm going to show you how that kind of opens up possibilities that we can kind of do more stuff with it. Okay. So I'm going to jump over here to workflows and let's build a new one. We'll build something from scratch. So we're going to use our timeline or custom app events. And we can build something where a social reply is received, right? Or let's just say, do something a little, maybe even a little more interesting. Connection request accepted. So let's say you're doing kind of like a hybrid motion. Let's say you're using Aimfox. You want to be building up your top of funnel, increasing your number of connected accounts. Let's say your team is thinking about social selling and having your reps creating content, posting it on social in order to increase that top of funnel and to maybe get their personal brand in front of buyers, not who are like wanting to buy immediately. Sometimes, yes, but in other cases, you just want to increase the familiarity. You want your team, their handsome and beautiful faces, just showing up on the feed associated with whatever it is, the problem that you solve, and being funny, being smart, all that stuff. And let's say you're like a little lighter on some of these automation steps. So maybe you're automating maybe some follows or connection requests. But when it comes to maybe interacting with the customers and messaging, let's say you're doing that manually, or let's say that you're using that as a chance to go omni-channel. So when you get this connection request accepted inside of HubSpot, and like I said, you can build this in other workflow tools, but we'll just use this as an example. We want to kick off a workflow. So whenever a connection request is accepted in Aimfox, that pushes over to HubSpot. We want to kick off a workflow, and then inside of HubSpot, we can do things with that. So for example, we could, let's see if we want to, we'll just keep it really simple here. We could build dedicated workflows for each of your reps. So if you have multiple sales reps, you could have multiple workflows with unique steps, or more commonly, what we see that people will build branching logic inside of the workflow. So we got a connection request accepted, and it wasn't accepted from anybody. A specific sending account sent a connection request. A specific member of your team sent out a connection request. And so it is that person that we're going to want to assign this contact to, right? Because that's the person who has the connection request. It's not just a random person. Then this is where this can be different than other channels. When you're doing email and you have maybe like these sort of avatar personas that you're sending out emails where there's not a real person associated directly with them, then maybe you can do a little bit more round robin. And even with email, it's just like a little less associated with a person. So if you say, oh, my colleague Alex told me you were interested and I'm emailing you to follow up, most people are like, yeah, whatever, that's fine. But if you get a connection request from Alex and then Harris calls you and says, hey, thanks for accepting my connection request, they're like, what are you talking about? I don't know who you are. So we can build some fine tuning kind of branches in here, and we can add a criteria like requiring the filtering based on the account associated with the person who got it, and we can assign that to Alex. Here, I'll do this is what I wanted to do. I want to do contact properties, and I'm going to go to connection. Connection status is accepted. Okay. And then let's see, we'll do contact properties and we'll do social. Last sent, social sender, right? So this will be like the last person who's associated with a sent activity. And we can say like it contains Alex. So let's say we're using unique names on our team, right? So this would be like, okay, cool. We have a workflow. If it contains Alex, if the sending account contains the name Alex, we're going to now have this branching logic down here. If it doesn't, well, maybe we can set up a fallback, and we could like send an email to our like RevOps administrator being like, hey, like there's a ghost in the machine. And we can send it to our RevOps person as like a little fallback. Because it's like, hey, we're getting connection requests from accounts that, like, I don't know, somebody must have connected another account that we didn't update this workflow, and so things got a little out of whack, right? So Alex got a new connection request. Awesome. Now, what do we want Alex to do? Well, we could like create a call task, right? And we could, if there's a phone number, we can kind of do some branching logic. If there's a phone number on the record, make a call. If there's not, we can create a task to like send a manual message back, things like that. We could kind of spend all day, and if there's specific interest or questions about this, I can go further. This can be like a little bit like watching paint dry, but hopefully as you're hearing me think through the conditionals and the branches and kind of what's possible, you can see that like these are just things that all of this data is inside of the CRM. And so managing this type of automation inside of the CRM is just going to make your life easier. You can build other workflows like enrolling in paid ad audiences. That's like a really powerful thing that we're seeing people do more and more and more, especially if you're involved on a platform like a LinkedIn or like X. Phones also, like basically anything where people are going omni-channel. And I think for me, like when I think about our conversation today and the value of this conversation for most teams is that most teams are relying heavily on one channel. And anytime you go omni-channel, you're going to really increase your surface area and your odds of success. And so within the CRM environment, it gives you the ability to do that with like a little bit less friction, especially if you have a dialer connected, if you've got your paid ads tool connected, especially to a tool like Hubspot. But like Close also makes this really easy. Close has great dialer baked in, and then they have this new Chloe AI agent that's pretty dang powerful. So there's a lot of ways to do this. You can use Breeze AI, which is HubSpot's AI agent too, to do some interesting things. But let me stop here, and then we can take a quick check-in on how we're doing, and then we can cover like reporting and attribution. But Alex, anything in chat or anything you're seeing here that you just want to kind of call out from your perspective?
So basically, basically the bulk of the value here is that you kind of like take all the data that you get from like Aimfox in this case, you break it down into chunks that you could, or like endpoints that you can use, and then within your HubSpot you can use individual things. You can use like this data to trigger certain actions that will cause certain reactions, as opposed to like without outbound sync. Yes, like you could probably like add the note with the message that came in, but like as far as HubSpot is concerned, it's not going to be like natively like integrated. Like it's just going to be like text in a note, and that's that. So like is that the like that's how I see the core of the value here. Like, and correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah.
No, that's exactly right. That's exactly much. Took you 15 seconds to say what it took me 15 minutes to say. Right. Exactly. That's exactly right.
To summarize it.
No, that's exactly right.
So we can make a short out of this and post it on YouTube after.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It'll get 1,500 times the views. That's exactly right. We've got this big chunk of data from Aimfox. We can put that big chunk into a note as another big chunk, or we can split it up, atomize it, and then each of those individual things, those are little handholds that HubSpot can grab onto and do specific things with inside of the system. That's exactly right. And because Aimfox gives us so much data, there's a lot of handholds. There's a lot of things that you can run, automation you can run off of that. And people who have only used Aimfox may not realize that, but like that's not, everybody doesn't do that. There's a lot of platforms that don't do that. And there's a lot of platforms that like, it's almost not even thinking about like maybe our peers in this space and the Instantly's and email Bisons of the world, but it just, if you look at sales engagement platforms more broadly, some of them they make nothing available, or they'll charge $15,000 for an API key. So, literally
the problem becomes even bigger with AI, because like AI is super powerful, but you need to give it data that it can work on. And like, if you're not structuring the data properly, if you're not breaking it down into like actionable chunks, then like, you're missing out on most of the value. And like, I think like one of the visions, how we're building Aimfox, like we're fully aware of like the direction we think the world is going, right? Like everything is becoming more and more automated. AI is playing a huge part in everybody's day-to-day, at least in our ICP's day-to-day. And we need to make sure that like, the way we build things and we structure things, be it through our API, the MCP server, or how we structure webhooks, like everything needs to be like, scalable and kind of like, understandable in an easy way for AI especially. And then that gives you all of these options.
Yep. And I think that like that vision, I would say, I agree. Like I really agree. But you see some people not everyone feels this way, and we'll see, time will tell, right? The market, everyone's placing different bets, and there's winners and losers. There's only one rule: no crying in the casino. But that's about it. So,
but when you look at like how the tech scene is changing, like I kind of feel that like that like 98% of the people like out there don't know what's happening. Like they have no idea what's going on, and I feel like there's like 2% of us in our space who are like, guys, like something big is happening, and like like crazy stuff is happening. Like,
oh, like, I totally agree. I mean, the reality is, for the folks who are attending this live and the folks who are watching this after the fact, you're part of that small chunk too, kind of investing in learning and education and staying current. But I totally agree. I think most people aren't. It's funny about that too. The whole tinfoil hat thing is like tinfoil hats. They do block radio frequencies. Like some of these things, like sometimes it's hard because when you're, I don't know, I'm not saying tinfoil hat people are necessarily right or wrong, but like when you have this like limited, feels like a front row seat to something, it's hard to tell, am I crazy or am I ahead? And sometimes it's a little bit of both. But I do feel like we have this unique seat. We work with some of these agencies who are so sophisticated, and some of these in-house teams, I would say in general, agencies are ahead of the modal of the average in-house
Yeah.
team. But so I think that to me, that's like a cheat code for us as platforms or as software products, because we get to see what they build and we're like, well, or at least for me, I'm like, that's crazy. Okay, well, you all were saying this about, using, the lead magics of the world years ago before everybody picked up on that, and the clays of the world before
Yeah.
everybody picked up on that. So yeah, but sometimes it does feel like, oh, am I losing my mind, or is how we work changing? And I do think how we work is changing.
I find this I find it like, so like when I talk to like all of these very advanced agencies and teams using Aimfox, and I see these like super advanced workflows that they're doing with like all of these tools put together, and like it, like, I'm like, wow, like, like I am not doing that at that level, like, and like, but it's crazy to see that. I was just saying this on a previous webinar, like over a third of our user base is using our MCP server, and I'm like, that's insane. Like, so many people adopting stuff.
That's very high.
Yeah, like we're like, I was like we were because we launched the MCP server like end of summer last year, and we didn't announce it anywhere. We were just like, yeah, we have it. It's a hype new thing to have, and like I don't really see many people using it. And then like we look at the numbers in like December, and we're like, wow, like look at this usage, like it's crazy. And then like things just started like going up really like. But yeah, so Arpit, a question from the audience. Can you please show a demo doing in Hubspot? I believe this is Hubspot, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Arpit, here, let me show you something fresh in Hubspot. Let me show you what the dashboards look like in HubSpot. And by the way, the reason why we haven't been showing a ton on the Aimfox side is because literally you just open the settings and you just put the link in there, and that's it. You just use Aimfox like normal. So there's not, and we're not really showing our product either, because you spend about 5 minutes in our product. You spend about 5 minutes less, about 5 seconds setting the settings. And then the idea is that you use Aimfox like normal and you use your CRM like normal. So I just wanted to mention that. The reason why we're not showing it is because you're
welcome, HubSpot, for all the screen time you're getting.
I know, what the heck? You should be paying us. Yeah. All right. Well, we got to hold out until if CRM companies, if you want to bribe us, I'll give you my Venmo. All right. So I'll show you something fresh in HubSpot here, which is reporting. So something that's interesting about reporting in HubSpot is that we have this data model of contacts, we have companies, we also have activities. So there's lots of ways to think about how a campaign is performing. In a B2B setting, typically, like our unit of measure, what we're thinking about is like leads, really specifically like companies that we're trying to sell to, but there's individual people that we're working. And there's sometimes multiple people within a company, multiple contacts within a company that we're working. So like this is an example of a report that's looking at the contact level. But you can, if you imagine, if you're a shape rotator in your mind, if you imagine looking at like a diamond, you can rotate the shape and you look at it from a different angle, and you could look at it from the company's perspective or from the activities perspective. You could break it down by campaign type, and you could look at like funnel reporting to see conversion after the fact. And this is where I think that like, especially the Aimfoxes of the world, you want to allocate based on territory. Yeah, okay, that's a great question. Let me pull that up in a second. I'll finish this thought and I'm going to get back to that allocate by territory. I love that question. I think the Aimfoxes of the world, and you think about social selling, unlike other channels, really unlike any other channel, in my opinion, direct mail, phone, email, you have this long tail of nurturing the relationship with the buyer, where you could have a conversion event that happens 6 or 12 months later. And if you're just looking in this snapshot of like, hey, did I message them today and did I make a new deal today or not? And that's success, is like an immediate deal or not. Then you're going to have a really hard time actually measuring the effectiveness of your outbound program. When you get into the CRM and you're doing this more longitudinal, like longer term cohort analysis of like, how are my campaigns doing and how long does it take someone to convert? You look at like a meeting that gets booked 3-6 months later that's inbound or a Google search. Well, I mean, yeah, sure, they looked us up on Google, but like they've been following Alex on LinkedIn for 6 months. And then they saw one post of his and they typed in Google and then they booked an inbound form. And so I think that like the probably, I don't want to say number one. The number one failure mode I've tend to see in outbound over the years is failure to launch. But if you're here, you probably don't have that problem. But most people are just afraid to start. Once you get past that, I think the number one like error I see people making is like under attributing their campaigns and only looking at this
100%.
immediate return. You know what I mean? I'm sure you see 100%. That too, Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure you have boomerang customers that come back a few months later and they're like, hey, actually this was working great. I didn't see it at the time. We want to sign back up. I'm sure you see that all the time.
Like, I'm really big on attribution, and like all the marketing stuff that we do for ourselves, like attribution, we need to have exact attribution because that gives you context. And without it, you're just like, you're just lost in the fog.
Yeah, 100%. I want to talk about Arpit asked about allocating based on territory. I love that idea. Now I'll share just kind of like one way to do that. That's like simple. There's more, probably you can get more complicated with it, but I like to try to keep things simple. So you could, for example, trigger this workflow to kick off on any event type. So let's just imagine that we have a list and we're starting with the connection request is being sent. What you could do to allocate leads based on territory, let's just say you want to allocate them immediately as soon as that connection request is sent. That's like the beginning of the process. You could do this, you could do other things, but let's just say you want that to be your start of the process. You could do a branching logic. And then what I would do in this case is I would probably do it by campaign name. And I would like probably in Aimfox, if you have a unique rep, there's a few ways to do this. Let's just say you have 5 territories and 5 reps. Each rep could have their own campaign. And then you make sure that that rep is the only connected account to that given Aimfox campaign. And then you just make sure that it's really easy and you could use the campaign name to split it out. Or if you do have a pooled approach, you could use that sending profile like we did in that earlier workflow example. And then assign, and then in that earlier workflow example, what you would do is, let me pull it up. You would have like is this the one that we just made? I think so. They usually put it at the top. Let's see. Hold on. Sorry, I want to make sure I get the right one here. This one. You could like set a property in here to edit record, and you could set the property. I don't have like a territory property in here right now, so I'll just pick this property instead. But you could just replace the property and like imagine this were territory, right? Instead of lead status, and you could change it to something else. You could change it, so you could change this to, this is, whatever, Texas, West Coast, Europe, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, you could definitely do that. And you can also break out reporting that way too. We've got teams that have like 10 to 15 reps and they want to be able to break out. They have an interesting thing that we see is like, do you have a RevOps GTME type person who's like orchestrating this whole thing? Or do you have individual reps responsible for building their own pipeline? And I would say when you talk about allocation and reporting, workflows and things like that, that's like a pretty big, those are like the 2 ways of working that we tend to see. I would say like from our vantage point, we tend to see more teams having the conductor building the machine to support the reps. We tend to see that more than we see individual reps running this whole motion on their own. We do see both, but it's less common the other way. So that would affect how you would like potentially build out some reporting and the types of reports you would want. So if you had 10 reps and each is responsible for running their own, go-to-market machine or engine or whatever, you would want reports that would show you, is that rep kicking off campaigns like they should? Are they active? Are they finding new contacts, enrolling them in new contacts? Just the existence of activity or not, and then what's the scale of that activity or not. Whereas if you have a single orchestrator, they know they're running the engine, and so they tend to be more focused on optimizing how it's going. If that makes sense.
Yep.
So yeah, that would just be like that. That's like if you haven't made that decision yet, if you are like Aimfox curious, yeah.
Following up with an answer to that.
Oh sure.
Yeah. So I'm the only one who's using Aimfox end to end, but I have 6 people inside Hubspot based on territories.
Yeah.
So if a message is sent from Aimfox, I want the salesperson to call the lead based on territory.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we would need to talk about the specifics, but like, I mean, I'm 99% sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I do like the approach of separating things by campaigns because it does keep the analytics clean. And it does give you better rep tracking and performance. So like, for me, like I know when I was setting up some stuff for our sales team, I did break it down into individual reps.
Yeah.
So
I got one of those DMs, by the way, Ksenia from your team, my first contact with Aimfox before we even met.
Really?
Yeah. I got a connection request and a very good DM from her. I don't even know.
The DM was actually from me, probably.
Oh, probably. Probably. It looked like her. But no, I think it was her because I messaged her and either it was you or her, but she got back to me or you got back to me, but very quickly. So, I mean, people say outbound is dead. I mean, this stuff works.
No, man.
People check LinkedIn, they check their messages.
Outbound is not dead. Like, we see like on Aimfox, like 10%, like the average reply rate is like 10%. Like lead contacted to lead replied. So like, it's definitely not dead. Like, like message sent to message replied is like 30+% reply rates.
Yeah.
So like but relevance becomes more and more relevant, right? You need to have a good list. You need to know who you're reaching out to. And then personalization, yes, it helps. But I think like the biggest single thing that makes or breaks a campaign is the list building and how relevant your offer is for that list. If you word it this way or that way, if you do more or less personalization, it might help a little bit, add a few points to success, but like it's not going to make it or break it, So
yeah, I agree. Yeah. As much as I would like to say the most important thing is whether or not you can build a territory workflow in HubSpot, like Arpit is asking. As much as I would like to say that in my own self-interest, I don't think that's true. I definitely agree that it starts with the list for sure. And I think that, it's funny with that whole outbound is dead thing. I mean, this space is very competitive. It feels like everybody is growing and developing new features and doing new things. Like if it's dead, then we have a zombie problem. Because
I feel like it's the Cold War, right? Like the arms race. Like
exactly, that's what it feels like.
Shipping, building, trying to stay ahead of the curve.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's what it feels like for me being in it anyway. I feel the same exact way. It feels like, okay, we got to go. We got to like every new thing we see. It's like, all right, let's get the team so we can keep up,
Yeah. Listen, like, I think like we can like kind of like slowly like wrap things up 48 minutes in. I mean, we could go on forever, like exploring different workflows and stuff. So tell me, Harris, like how do people that are not using Outbound Sync, how do they check you guys out? Is there a free trial? What does your billing model look like? Just to share some information for the audience.
Yeah, of course. So we're a separate product from Aimfox. So we're just like a middleware connector. You can check us out, outboundsync.com. We're companies active on LinkedIn and on X. Definitely we can give you a free trial. So if you check it out and if you're curious about it, happy to give you a free trial to kick the tires on it. And then otherwise it's a month-to-month thing, generally based on sending volume. So, the amount of data that we receive, we're a pipes product. So the more data that comes into our pipes, the more money we need to build more pipes, basically. We don't care per user. We don't do feature gating. If you're already using like an email bison and you want to add Aimfox, well, we don't actually charge a connector fee. So if I want to encourage our users to go omni-channel. So there is like zero cost at all, like just to add another connector. And especially if you're adding social, those volumes usually are pretty low. So most of our customers that are running email and then they add social, they basically do it for free. There's no like additional cost for them. And I want that because I want them to get results and to stick around. Like we're in the retention business more than anything else. We're a small team, bootstrapped. We're in US and Europe across our team, and we like you guys, we just like to keep our customers. So that's try to keep it pretty simple. And if you fill out the form on the site, I'll get it. I do our go to market. We have customer success, and then we've got a lot. Basically, all of our money goes to engineering. So yeah.
None of us can afford to lose customers because we fight hard to get them. So and in order not to lose them, we need both to build really, really good products. So I think that's definitely something we both have in common. like, thank you so much for coming over and for sharing, like, for basically sharing intel about integration, and also like for explaining under the hood how things work. I think the value here is like obvious, and I am interested to see adoption of this integration. So we will be sharing this recording with the entire user base. And you guys that have joined us today on the live, thank you so much for coming on. And as far as for Aimfox, in case you're not using Aimfox and you're an Outbound Sync user, we do have a special discount for you. It's going to be a 50% 3-month discount on our agency plan. So it's pretty big, but it's we think like we're all about these integrations. We're going to be doing more and more of integrations with all these tools. So Harris, thank you so much for coming over, and everybody, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate the opportunity. Great questions, and good to see you again, man.
Thanks, man. Bye.